to everyone. And many of you know that Calcutta Management Association has over the years had the privilege and honor of hosting some of the luminaries of the corporate and academic world, and their knowledge, wisdom, and thoughts have enriched us and helped us immensely to fine-tune our activities in our own respective areas of work. The oldest management association of the country, CMA, has started a series of webinars on leadership in turbulent times, which was designed to calibrate our own thought processes in these challenging times with the help, advice, and guidance of the leaders from the management fraternity. Today, we will focus on what we call every generation has its own moment. This is ours. A small prelude before we start. Because we believe that COVID-19 will permanently change the way several generations live today. The worldwide pandemic has brought with it a public health crisis, global economic upheaval, and widespread uncertainty. But we all know COVID-19 will pass, but things will not return completely to normalcy. The virus and its economic impact will be transformative and likely to change lifestyle and financial choices for all of us. There are some indicators that we are already getting. For instance, the baby boomers. They are all going to go online. They are more comfortable with technology today. Many boomers are trying technology-enabled services for the first time. Grocery online, direct-to-consumer goods, in-home subscription entertainment. Many will continue using these services after the pandemic passes by, as they will be won over by the convenience, quality, and for some, necessity that will drive them. More boomers are using things like Zoom that we are on. People are moving into video conferencing to stay connected. Even those who are adverse to doing so before the virus spread are into it, and they are getting accustomed to a new way of staying in touch and socializing. Let's look at Gen X, who are the business leaders today. They are probably going to look for their swan song. They are business leaders who have been through 9/11, the dot-com bubble in 99, the Great Recession in 2008, and of course, they're in the middle of the current disaster. Many Gen Xers are thinking loud and hard about what they really want to be for the remaining chapters of their lives. They will like all battle-tested generals, coming off with an eye for one last victory before they ride off into the sunset. They may start looking at succession plans and life beyond business, and therefore different ways to offer their expertise and talent, but a safe distance from the battlefield. The millennials, they will now probably gravitate towards stability. The oldest of them will be about 40 now, and they have defined three seismic events. 9/11, during which they were under 18, 2008 recession, when many were gaining a foothold in their careers or getting ready to graduate, and now when they're in the prime of their career. They have often been labeled as job hoppers who really stay with one employer for long. They are more likely to feel engaged with their work rather than with their employer, because they are more purpose-driven and do not see any reason to be loyal to employers. They're always chasing the next best opportunity. And today, they may have to take their new decisions where they'll have to shift their priorities towards saving and stability and trading job satisfaction for these. Gen Z will have to reevaluate what they will do. because the oldest graduated from college last year and a vast majority are preparing to enroll into college. Many in Gen Z, the economic challenges will completely reframe their college decision. Some will see their college funds slashed due to collapsing assets. Others will fear taking excessive student loans to get into debt in the recession-shocked economy. What's more, many see their millennium predecessors are delaying buying a house or major life events because of the crushing weight of their debts, making them less inclined to want to follow the same path. So therefore, with very little warning, COVID-19 is changing the universe across generations. Although each generation will be affected differently, all will be forced to acclimatize to a new normal. People of all ages will see their lives disrupted and experience new hardship or new opportunities. Perhaps this will compel us to put aside generational divisions and come together to navigate these new realities together. Ladies and gentlemen, we today have the pleasure of hosting, we have had the pleasure of hosting Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan and Mr. Harshvardhan Nihotia in our two earlier episodes. And this evening, we look forward to another most engrossing and thought-provoking session from none other than Mr. Mohandas Pai. Thank you, Mr. Pai, and thanks to everybody for joining us today in this program. Mr. Pai, many of you know, is currently the chairman of RN Capital, and he's the chairman of Manipal Global Education. He's an advisor to the board of Manipal Education and Medical Group, a member of the board of Havells India, a member of the board of Ascendas Property Fund Trustee, the trustee manager of Ascendas India Trust, member of the board of Manipal University and the Institute of Public Enterprises, chairman of FICCI Skills Committee, past president of All India Management Association, chairman of the Regulatory and Financial Technology Committee of Securities and Exchange Board of India, founder trustee of the Akshay Patra Foundation and Investment Committee, member of the SIDBI India Aspiration Fund and the India Fund of Funds, and member of the board of the National Stock Exchange of India. Previously, he served as a member of the board and CFO at Infosys. Over a 17-year-old period, he was voted CFO of the Year multiple times, spearheaded the first listing of an India-registered company on NASDAQ, headed several additional departments such as HR, L&D, and infrastructure, and lead business units in Finacle SM. In 2000, he co-founded Akshay Patra Foundation Bangalore, a midday meal program for school children. Today, this program feeds over 1.6 million children each day in 13,500 plus government schools across 12 Indian states. He has also helped launch 14 different investment vehicles across private equity and venture capital, which have cumulatively invested in over 250 companies with a capital base of $400 plus US million. He was awarded the Padma Shri by the President of India in 2015 and the Karnataka Rajyotsava Award in 2004. Mr. Pai holds a bachelor's degree in commerce as a university rank holder from St. Joseph's College of Commerce, Bangalore, a bachelor's degree in law from Bangalore University, and is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India as an All India rank holder. He is based out of Bangalore. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you Mr. TV Mohandas Pai. Welcome, sir. Mr. Pai.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. I think that was a very fascinating introduction to a very fascinating subject itself as the time comes for the current generation. Now, I think, if you go back in history, we watch very cataclysmic events that happen and change the world. Let's go back to the years 1914, 1919, the time the First World War started. When the World War started in 1914, how did the world look? age of empires. The British Empire, the French had the Republic, the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and then you had the Japanese Empire and the Chinese. India, of course, was that time a colony of the British, and the world was colonized. Suddenly, in 5 years after the war, you had the Russian Revolution in 1917, Austro-Hungarian Empire of 600 years disappeared. You had the Ottoman Empire disappear and the Muslim world in turmoil, and starting the first moves for Israel, and the trouble continues today. The British Empire was weakened. America became the dominant power. And we also had in the East, the Chinese Empire disappear in 1919, and the Japanese Empire grows stronger. In the blink of 5 years, 600 years of history, 600 years of empires was gone. And the generation that grew after the war understood what an industrial era war could do. Kill 16 million people, mass killing on a scale never seen before. And that unfinished agenda of the First World War led to the Second World War. 60 million people died. And at the end of the Second World War, Germany was destroyed, Japan was destroyed. The world was in the way to becoming decolonized after India's freedom in 1947. And it became a bipolar world with the United States and Soviet Russia. And the war created around 200 countries today. And the decolonization became a fact. The world changed. Democracy expanded all over the world. And the unfinished agenda of the First World War in the Middle East, after India's freedom in parts of India and other areas, still engage our attention today. So now we are seeing another event which will overtake the events that happened after Second World War. Our Second World War, we saw the rise of United States and Soviet Russia, the decline of Soviet Russia and the disappearance of Soviet Russia, the rise of China as an economic power after the miracle of Japan, Germany, Southeast Asia, etc. India now a $3 trillion power. And next year or the year after that, the emerging markets in total GDP will overtake the OECD. The total GDP of the world is $82 trillion today. And now we got this COVID, which will change matters dramatically all across the world for very many reasons. Let me explain why. First of all, like in the war, first war and Second World War, the whole world is impacted. The global financial crisis was essentially America and Europe, a little bit in Asia. But this crisis is impacting the entire world. There are more than 150 countries, I think, where the virus is there. And there's no certainty the virus will not come to your country. And there is no cure for the virus. It's not the people who are dead that is causing concern. 3.5 million people infected, 240,000 people, I think, today are dead, because the numbers on a global scale look small. Every life is important, but the numbers are small. But the fear that it could become pandemic and spread, and we could have 300, 400, 500 million people impacted, that's what some studies say, which I think are a little bit far-fetched. But there's no cure for the vaccine. And at a time when people want healthcare, healthy lives, having no cure for a pandemic scares everybody. And because of not having a cure, the whole world is in lockdown. Because in China, Japan is now in a lockdown, Southeast Asia, Singapore, India, and then Europe, and the UK, United States, South America, etc. Most countries are in a lockdown. And economic activity has shut down for the last maybe 45 to 30 days. And IMF says the impact of the shutdown will be a decline of global GDP from expected 3% to maybe 0 or a negative 1%. That means totally about $3.5 trillion of GDP expected for this year will grow, and the GDP that was there at the beginning of this calendar year may decline over the year. So the whole world is impacted, and what comes out of that will be very different, because you see many of the economic blocks are in great difficulty. China has been through great change, and China's economic outlook will change now. Japan has been stagnant for 20 years. They spent $1 trillion now on a stimulus. Their borrowing is about 300% of GDP, and nobody knows whether they'll grow in future. Southeast Asia is at the cusp of many strange things happening there. India was growing at 3 trillion and going to 5 trillion. It will set us back by a year. Europe is in a very bad state. Europe would have grown at 1.5% a year for the next 2 or 3 years. Now they may degrow, and nobody knows whether Europe will grow. Italy is in deep trouble. Spain is in deep trouble, and we are seeing signs of lack of economic growth. The COVID is impacted Russia. Then you see the UK in a shutdown. 15% of GDP stimulus is put into place, 365 million pounds. The US has put $2.5 trillion on a $22 trillion debt already into stimulus. And the US GDP for the first quarter of this year is coming negative at about, I think, 4%. And Europe is negative 3.5%. And this quarter, April, May, June, is going to be even more disastrous. The US economy this quarter could decline by maybe 5 to 8%. And US could see a deep decline greater than the global financial crisis. And the Europe economy is not very strong. Japan's economy is not very strong. But the first thing we need to understand for the new generation to come up, a new world to come up, is to see which economies will come up. And I do believe China will continue because they got internal buying power. Southeast Asia will maybe go sideways. We don't know. The demand is not very great. India will, of course, have a bad year, but I think will come back next year. Europe will decline in share of global GDP. The UK has come out of Brexit, and if the UK goes back to its old ways of winning the world, then hopefully they'll do much better. The US will bounce back because, the US is a very dynamic economy, but whether it'll bounce back to high growth, we don't know. We have to see. South America is in decline. Some of the African countries are getting the virus is spreading. We don't know what's going to happen. Sub-Saharan Africa had grown very well, 6.5% for the last 15 years. They may grow down because of decline in commodity prices. So, second point which I want to talk about is the global supply chain. The Industrial Revolution created a global supply chain, linking manufacturers to consumers all around the world. And people who control the global supply chain control the global economy. That's why you have the multinational dominating. Now, after the Second World War, and after Japan has come up, Germany has come up, China now controls the global supply chain. China makes 24% of the world's manufacturing. The largest producer, largest importer, largest exporter, largest foreign currency reserves, etc. When China has so much, the world realized how dependent they are on China. China was already on the back foot because of the United States putting out tariffs under President Trump, because the US felt that China was taking the US for a long ride, not opening up its markets and supplying goodies to America at low prices and subsidizing them. So there's already a trade dispute, and trade was being rearranged. For the first time, Western companies who poured in $1.5 trillion into China feel that they have to diversify the supply chain. And more companies are leaving China, going to Vietnam. Some may come to India. And the Japanese government has now said they're putting $2 billion to ensure the Japanese companies diversify. America found 90% of an active ingredient in drugs comes from China. India found this API for its drugs mostly comes from China. So China dominates. And this kind of a global supply chain which has been created, where China dominated, will now change. And many countries are bringing back manufacturing to their own countries because they don't want the risk of depending on another country in case such a pandemic or something else hits. They're re-evaluating the risk. They're putting in legislation. Europe has put barriers for Chinese companies to buy European companies. The companies' value is down. India too has put in FDR restriction. So the second point I want to say is the global supply chain is going to be reordered. The next big issue is the oil industry. The oil industry, once upon a time, was a $4 trillion industry. Then it became a $2.5 trillion industry. Now it's come to maybe $1 trillion or $750 billion. Oil prices have crashed to $21. Of course, the mercantile exchange, it went negative because futures expired and you have to take delivery, and there was no capacity to take delivery. A lot of oil is in tankers. It happened primarily because the US was pumping out shale gas and oil to the extent of 13.5 million barrels a day. The US is the largest producer of oil at that point of time. And OPEC, which is the cartel with 30 million tons per day, out of 100 million tons consumed by the world every day, was trying to cut capacity to balance the price. And they found that if they cut capacity to keep the price reasonable, then America benefited. America went on pumping out. And you can't control American production because of antitrust laws. So this time, the Russians decided that when the oil price came down, they're not going to play ball with Saudi Arabia because they felt American shale gas was the enemy. And Saudi Arabia tried to cut production, but the Saudis said if Russia doesn't play ball, we're going to increase production. They increased production from 9 million to 11 million barrels. And last month, I think the average production was about 30 million barrels from 28. So we saw a glut of oil and oil prices crashed. Oil prices crashed at the time when there is surplus oil to the extent of 30 million barrels a day. Oil consumption has come out because the whole world is locked in. People are not consuming oil. Oil consumption in India has come down 70, 80%. In America, 50, 60% because people are not traveling. In China, it has come down from January, February, March. And China is the second largest consumer in the world. It's come down in Japan. It's come down in Europe. So there's a challenge of price coming down. And even if you cut 10 million barrels to balance the budget for Saudi Arabia, they require oil at 85, not possible. For Russia, it's about $45. So the oil industry, which is very, very large, is impacted deeply. And it will take 1 or 2 years for it to come back. But in this 1 or 2 years, we could see a technology shift for various other reasons, which I will express. So the possibility is that the dominating nature of the oil industry may not be there in the future unless we see some radical conflicts happen and oil supplies contract when things come back to near normal. The world has been engaged in climate change. And most of you in Calcutta, in Delhi, in Bangalore, we're not seeing blue skies for some time. Our river waters have become contaminated. Now, suddenly, we are breathing fresh air. We are seeing blue skies because there are no vehicles in the road. The whole city is silent. The whole of India has gone silent. There is no traffic, no trucks going on the roads, etc. And even in Europe, across Europe, in the US and everywhere else. And suddenly, for the last 1 month, people are breathing fresher air. They're becoming healthier. And strangely, death rates have come down. India has about 160,000 people dying every year of accidents. There are no accidents because there is no travel. And many hospitals are working at 30% capacity in many parts of India. So people dying has come down. In Mumbai, 12 people used to die in the railways every day. The railways have stopped running, so nobody is dying. So if you have a lockdown, like your expectancy possibly goes up. So when you see this, the impact of all this will change people's behavior. People may say, we want the blue skies, we want rivers to be clean, so they will change their habits. So alternate energy may grow up, even though become bigger, even though people may think is more expensive. There has to be a debate on the use of oil. So I think the oil industry is damaged for the next 2 years, and that will have repercussions, geopolitics in the Middle East and in other parts. Venezuela is a broken country. Nigeria is seeing a major part of its revenues grow. So there are geopolitical implications. And the oil industry, I think, will have a big challenge. Now, other industries like the international travel industry, tourism, restaurants, and airports, they're all in trouble. There are no international flights going on. All countries are shut down. And national flights are almost collapsed all over the world. And restaurants in the United States have shut down. And home delivery takes place. About 36 million people, I think, have filed for unemployment claims in the United States. Never seen before. I think all the employment in the United States after the Second World War has gone away and is declined. And that's why US is giving out money to enterprises to pay wages. So tourism has gone in many parts of the world, and tourism is possibly the biggest industry in the world, the largest employer. And tourism also meant that luxury goods were purchased, and that industry is gone. So a whole lot of service industries have gone, leading to large-scale unemployment and leading to lower demand, leading to lower consumption, and demand will be subdued for the rest of the year. That's what most people say. And in the financial market, we are seeing something very different. The United States came out with a $2.5 trillion stimulus. The whole of the world, including Japan, has come out with a $5 trillion stimulus by now, if you count. And the US interest rates have come down to 0.25%. UK 0.25%. Never seen this kind of interest rate. I think the last time it was there was in the Second World War. And now they have put $5 trillion into the market. Out of the $40 trillion of government debt before the crisis, $18 trillion having negative rates. Now, when they put out more money into the market by printing notes, interest rates cannot go up. Now, can we have decent interest rate in government securities for the next 5 years? Very doubtful, because the Federal Reserve balance sheet is now gone to about 6 trillion, and they say it may go to 12 trillion because they're buying bonds in the market. Japan has said they'll buy unlimited government bonds and corporate bonds, and UK may have to do the same thing, and the EU may have to do the same thing. And that means when central bank balance sheets go up, interest rates may not go up. What happens to pensioners? What happens to pension funds? What happens to many people who had to pay higher interest earlier? What happens to people who leave after sick? So I think it's very, very important to understand this, and that means interest rates will be lower. And I think we will see the impact on India. The last point I want to make before I talk about human behavior is globalization. Is globalization retreat? Yes, if you mean globalization, where people can fly all over the place, people can take visas on arrival, people can immigrate easily, the global supply chain where China, the dominant power, yes, it is in retreat. All countries are putting up barriers, trade barriers. Countries are trying to get the manufacturing in, re-looking at the risk, creating new alliances. So I think the fact that China has become so big is hurting the West domination of global economic power, and China's foray into the South China Sea is creating fear in Southeast Asia and other places. So globalization for the next few years could be in retreat. And the people are putting barriers to globalization. So many students going to the US to study, so many Chinese students going all over the world to study, the Chinese buying up American companies, the Americans buying other companies. So we don't know. I think that is something that we have got used to in the last 20 years, flying at a moment's notice everywhere. That is unfortunately in the retreat. And what is going to come, we have to wait and see. Now, what is the impact on India? India is a $3 trillion economy, 205 lakh crores. Before that, let me talk about another point globally. Like the person who introduced spoke, we are seeing generational shift to use of technology. The baby boomers are using technology like never before because they're all logged in and this is the only way. They're buying groceries. They're getting entertained on Netflix and Hotstar and everywhere else. They're seeing movies and songs they're not seen for a long time, almost full day, almost cheap. And then the business leaders generation, Generation X is like the introducer said, evaluating what should they do with their lives, because the fear of mortality is spreading. Should we continue, undertake the stress life, or take it easy, or retire, or just live very differently? The millennials are in a flux because the millennials are going to be impacted by this global crisis. If jobs disappear, the middle class disappears or becomes less, and salaries are cut. How will they live with their EMI? Because for the millennials, I think EMI is a big problem. And for Gen X too, the EMIs is a big problem. And for the Gen Z are coming into college and they're finding a different world. So habits have changed. Digital, which have taken 5-7 years, has become a part of life. And all businesses will have to be digital in future. And people's habits changing means the way they do business, the way they do everything else will change. The way we interact with each other, the way we get education, the way we get entertainment, the way we get health, the way we access commerce, the way we get songs, etc., all that will change. That means the businesses that are running on the old model, newspapers, will people still read newspapers? Will people still travel to other places so frequently? Will people go to movie theaters? Will people go to malls as frequently as they did? Yes, they go to malls for socializing, but will they go to malls as much? In America, many of the malls and many of the supermarkets are shutting down, and it's terrible. Will people go to banks, physical banks? Will people do financial transactions all online? So habits have changed. And that means the Gen Z who already do all this, and millennials who also maybe do substantially all this, their time has come. So what happened in India? We are a 205 lakh crore economy, $3 trillion. And this year, there will be zero growth in my view. Let me explain. Agriculture is 15% of GDP. We'll have a bumper crop this year. The monsoons are supposed to be normal. That means agriculture can grow at 3.5-4%. So we'll have enough food, we'll have enough vegetables and everything to eat. Prices may not be high, so we take care of our farmers. Industry is 25% of GDP, and industrial growth may be negative 10%. That is 2.5% negative. The reason is very clear. In April, not a single personal vehicle was sold. I'm so shocked, not a vehicle was sold. Everything is shut in. Today, they say the shutdown will extend to May 17th. There's just a report that's coming in. So that means that this whole year, manufacturing will be down because vehicles and other personal conveniences, consumption of steel, concrete in real estate may come down. because people will be scared about their income, about the job certainty, and they may not buy houses. So the real estate industry will be badly impacted. The manufacturing and auto industry, the commodities industry like steel manufacturing, aluminum industry, the building metal industry, and all metal consumption may be negative this year. And with China having a supply chain cut off or Chinese consumption come down and China being export surplus, they may start dumping all over the place. And this decline in commodity prices mean, along with oil, it means that sub-Saharan Africa will not see a much decline in the GDP because they're all countries which exports commodities. So the third issue will be, I think there'll be large-scale unemployment in India in many sectors for various reasons. First, we saw the migrants in Delhi and Mumbai. I don't know about Calcutta. I've not read reports of Calcutta because the whole state of West Bengal has become very secretive. It appears like Churchill said, an iron wall or whatever has come down on West Bengal. But the migrant crisis is the interesting crisis. The people have come from UP and Bihar to come to Delhi to work as contract laborers, work as street vendors, etc. They get paid maybe 10, 15,000 rupees. They live very badly, do not have much savings. And suddenly they feel threatened and they don't have savings to have food. Whatever they save, they send away. So they all want to go back. And they go back to the villages where they'll be comfortable. They may get food. They may be with family. And they may decide, we don't want to go back. Why go back to a place where you get 10, 15,000 and we're not sure of our lives? Nobody will take care of us. And we are treated shabbily. When the city shut down, nobody took care of us. So they may not go back. If they don't go back, Delhi may get decongested a bit because 25, 30% of Delhi is migrant labor. And that's a very huge number. Similarly to Mumbai. And that shows that there will be a reverse migration from the big cities back to villages and smaller towns. And that requires a rechange in how people work. India is a country where 100 million people are supposedly migrants that go all over the place. So will they continue going or they'll go back to their home states is something that you have to consider. But they're going to be large-scale unemployment. Let me explain. There are 8 crore people on the PF and ESI who get a monthly compensation, 2.5 crore government servants. Government servants are not going to be laid off because the government will use the tax money to pay them, even though after a long time, they made sure they're not going to get the DA, and many states are cutting the pay of government servants because other people also are in pain. So out of these 8 crores, I reckon 4.5, 5 crores are contract labor because most industries, most services employ contract labor for the majority of the people who work with them, and they've been quietly laid off. The hospitality industry has laid off. The securities industry has downsized. The housekeeping industry has downsized in real estate. And we are seeing in manufacturing, many people are shut down. They set up the labor and the labor is gone. And whether the labor will come back or not, we don't know. And as for the middle class is concerned, the IT industry has got 4.5 million people. They said they're not going to hire. So the 8 million graduates that are going to 9 million graduates, 90 lakh graduates, they're going to come out this year. Whether they're going to get jobs, what they're going to do is a big problem for India. India graduates 90 lakh young people every year. And, the IT industry may quietly lay off some people because their work depends on the US and Europe. And in US and Europe, they're seeing decline in their business in this quarter. And the next quarter too doesn't look very rosy, but work may start again in September. They said they're not going to hire. The banking industry may not hire this year. All the insurance agent service industry may not hire. The restaurants and the logistic companies and others are reevaluating everything. We have 1 crore truck drivers, 1 crore trucks. That means 2 crore truck drivers. How many of them will be back? We don't know. A portal where we do logistics tells us that only 15% of the normal traffic is available in trucks around the country. And with economic activity down, they'll be there. So large-scale unemployment will be there, and getting new jobs is going to be tough. Many people in the middle classes may pay pay cuts, and that's going to be a very big problem. The next is in India is we could have negative inflation. The inflation is coming down. 45% of CPI is food inflation, largely onion, tomatoes for vegetables. And I think we are seeing that there is a decline in demand, and the decline in demand, prices will not go up. The cereals prices may not go up this year. Vegetables, we may have a bumper crop this year. People are throwing away because they can't reach market. Yes, there are some local issues which increase prices. And overall, for the balance of the year, with commodity prices down, oil prices down, inflation may actually be negative. And we don't know how to handle negative inflation. It's not deflation, because we could grow this year. And then change in habits. Like the moderator said, there's a change in habit, because all of us have been locked down. Most of us experienced lockdown for maybe 45, 60 days. And we are the consuming class. And the consuming class has changed their habits. And maybe 60, 70% of GDP of India comes from the 300, 350 million people who are the consuming class, largely middle class, largely educated. And if they change their habits, then everything will change. We are not in technology like we're doing now in Zoom. So the change of habits will create opportunities for this generation, and this generation time has come. Next is, I think the opportunities for India are huge. Now, opportunities for India are huge, provided government comes out with certain stimulus program. The government came out with a stimulus program of 1.70 lakh crores, and the 1.70 lakh crores was used for people at the bottom of the pyramid. About 20 crore women got 500 rupees. They got 8 crore women got free gas, and about 80 crore people got free rations for 3 months. Old age pensioners paid. Construction workers got some money, and the ESI PF was liberalized to get your own money back. So government has used that opportunity to give back money. Now they're giving back some tax refunds for up to 5 lakhs for tax and for GST, etc. But a lot more has to be done. We are told that the next will be a stimulus for MSMEs. The MSMEs have a problem. One report says, looking at the financials, that 25% MSMEs have money for only 1 month, 25% more have money for 3 months. Most of them made the payroll for March, because they worked majority of March in most part of India. April, nobody has worked. So I don't know whether they'll make the April payrolls. Since the stimulus does not come, many people are gone. And they require liquidity, not solvency at this point of time. And even though the RBI has come out with certain measures, they're not seeing liquidity. And government is reportedly coming out with the MSME plan to guarantee working capital loans to them up to 3 lakh or 5 lakh crores. And I think that'll be interesting, because then banks will have to pump. Now, what did the RBI do? The RBI did what it does normally in a crisis, lowered interest rates and allowed the economy to have liquidity. They pumped in liquidity, and today banks have deposited 7 lakh crores of liquid money into the reverse repo, 3.5%. They reduced the reverse repo to make banks lend. They reopened refinancing for MSMEs up to 50,000 crores, mutual funds 50,000 crores, gave money to NABARD. The RBI has done a lot to make banks lend, but banks are not lending. Banks are not lending because they're scared of having more NPS. They already have an NPA problem. They're coming out of it. That's why we need the government guarantee. And we don't know what the RBI do. Maybe say reverse repo will become zero. So they'll force the banks to lend. That means interest rates will come down. Interest rates will come down. Your FD rates may come down. Retired people may have a challenge because they leave off the FDs. And industry may get some relief in terms of lower interest rates. And we are seeing that many of the big companies are going to the markets and raising money much cheaper. So we could see a massive refinancing of corporate India in the next 1 or 2 years, because we need more liquidity, lower interest rates to work. And the government did an interesting thing in the budget, last budget, where they said a series of government bonds can be invested by foreign investors freely and repatriated too. So the government is also opening up to get money from outside, and the RBI may have to monetize the deficit, print notes for the first time after a long period of time to give money to the government. Otherwise, the government may have to borrow, and there's not enough money to borrow. Interest rates may go up. So the RBI is trying its best to create liquidity, and the government has to give guarantees. The next thing which we need, very importantly, we need a large reconstruction budget. We need the government to pump in money for infrastructure, build more roads, bridges, build the railways again, build ports, build our airports, etc., and put in money for housing, put in money for sewage, water, etc. So government has to spend 5 to 6 lakh crore this year to make sure that the infrastructure takes off, and borrow money nationally and internationally. Because they do that, the next year growth could be better. This year growth could be negative. And this year we're expecting 20 lakh crores increase in GDP, 10%. That is 6.5% growth, 3.5%, 4% inflation, nominal 10%. The 10% is not there. We could be negative. And for the next year, 21-22 to be not bad, then we need to make sure that we have to have the government put a stimulus, and the stimulus will create demand for steel, cement, labor will be employed, infrastructure will go up, etc. Next is that we need to have environmental policy much better. In Bangalore, we have a river, which we forgot, which flows through Bangalore, which has become a sewage channel. Suddenly that water has become much purer. And people say somewhere outside the city, you can actually see the bottom of that place, and water is flowing cleanly because the polluting chemical industries, other industries are not letting out effluents into the river. We had a lake which caught fire, and the lake is suddenly becoming clean. So people are seeing for the first time blue skies, lakes, and water bodies. So there may be impact on the climate issue this year, and that could change matters. And now India has a global opportunity to take care of the reordering of the global supply chain. That means India can become a manufacturing center. For that, the government is trying to set up groups. Yogi Adityanath has been the first of the block. He's setting up a team of people to go to Japan to try. Karnataka is trying something. And I'm told that Tamil Nadu has set up a group to go to other countries to get manufacturing. Prime Minister Modi took a meeting of industry and a meeting of defense to make sure how to get foreign investment into India. So the great opportunity for India to become a center of manufacturing, but we must do what China did. China became a center for contract manufacturing. That is, the big brands went to China, got it manufactured locally by local companies, put the chapa and started selling. Look at Apple. I mean, Apple employs possibly 1.5 to 2 million people in China. And electronics, most of the big companies are there manufacturing, and much of the manufacturing is done by local companies. So our Indian entrepreneurs should look at becoming contract manufacturers to get global scale, supply to the Indian market under their own brand, and create products, similar products under the brand of others to sell globally and tackle global trade. Our exports have not gone up in the last 5 years, and this gives an opportunity for foreign investors to come. I'm told a lot of American companies are coming, so foreign investment will come. And if we spend on the stimulus, next year could be a good year. 7.4%, that's what IMF says. We don't know. We have to wait and see how it pans out, because now with the lockdown extending, there are many, many disruptions that are going to happen. So India is a place where there'll be an impact, but India has great hope for the future, and we could have a very good year next year. We need to do many things this year for the next year. What about all of us and business enterprises? What should we do? First of all, most MSMEs and others don't have money. So they must try to get liquidity, hopefully borrowing more working capital, and preserve cash. They must cut their fixed costs, hopefully not lay off people, and maybe cut salaries of people, cut their own senior staff salaries, and keep the cash so that many of them can come back when the economy opens up. And the economy, even if it opens up this month end, will take time till September to grow. And only in September, we could see 60-65% of normal business. Because, from now till September, the economy has to readjust. Suddenly, you take off, things are not going to work. So I think, we have to work on a survival mode. And survival mode means cut your costs, cut your fixed costs, keep the cash in the bank, and make sure that you hopefully don't lay off people. And then make sure that you rearrange your business processes. Look at the way you reach out to customers. Look at the way you use technology. Use more technology. Improve your processes. Make it easier for customers to interact with you. Cut down a lot of the unnecessary costs and become much more efficient. And you're able to do that when the business comes back. You could be the winner, because remember, you don't have to be the faster than a lion which could come behind you to try to catch you, but you got to be faster than other people or part of a team. You runs faster than others is going to get away because somebody else is going to get stuck. So similarly, some other industry, some other people may get stuck, but you could be ahead. So I think it's important to take care of the global trade. The next issue is very clearly, when people's habits change, and people's habits are changing, people must respond to them. So this is the era of the Generation Z. This is the era of the millennials who are going to use technology. And the earlier generations too, the baby boomers, the Generation X, etc., all of them are going to shift to technology. Habits have changed. The old habits are not going to work. E-commerce is going to be very big. Jio has tied up with Facebook and WhatsApp to spend money. Jio is going to get all the Kirana stores on its platform. And once you get Kirana stores platform, you connect them to customers in the neighborhood and deliver to them. It saves time and money. And you also aggregate the demand from them, go to levers and say, I'm giving you 5 million pieces, what is the price? So we could see depressed prices for consumer goods because when people don't have money, they will downtrade. And we saw levers results shock the market because, in terms of volumes, their ability to sell has come down and they're the top brand and the stock price has gone up very high. We don't know what's going to happen on Monday, because the theory that consumer is going to remain all the time, people have to buy, the necessities have just gone for a toss. So, and the third thing which we have to do, which you got to be very careful, is we got to watch out for global competition. India has been very open. Unless the government puts up tariff, China may come and dump. And China coming and dumping means that we're going to be in trouble, because China has got enormous power. Our traders may go FDI guidelines to prevent them coming and buying up our companies. But nevertheless, with less demand globally, there could be dumping, and dumping could be on a very, very massive scale. So we got to be careful. And the last thing is, we must look at the whole world as a market. For most of us, unless you're a very local product, you must look at the whole world as a market. And the whole world as a market means that you must be globally competitive. If you're a manufacturer, can your cost structure support China? Now, our supply chain costs are coming down. Supply chain costs are increasing. And I was the board of Havels, and Havels set up a AC manufacturing plant near Delhi. They are fully automated, fully robotic, and the cost of manufacturing equals China. And they can beat China. So I think it's important for us to lower the cost of manufacturing and make sure that we compete globally and tackle the globe as a market. What happens to the IT industry? IT industry will go through very quiet time for the first 2 quarters, and hopefully, as you see in the past, whenever there's a decline in the West, they shed jobs and they shift jobs offshore. They, of course, will not be impacted much by the visa issue that President Trump is trying to build, because they got local staff there. But nevertheless, they said they're not going to hire, and that's going to be there. What about startups? Well, startups have to reconfigure. Many will die because they don't have money. Investors are very cautious. They're keeping the powder dry and saying, I'm going to invest only in the winners. So startups have to make sure that they reconfigure the business model, improve their processes, cut down unnecessary cost of customer acquisition, cost of delivery, and become more efficient and elongate the cash that they have. Because investors are looking around and saying, out of 10 people come in the industry, who is going to survive, and put money on them? And they're not going to give you very high valuations. Next, you must make sure that your tech improves, your customer interface improves. Next, you must improve your investor relations, because you must make sure that you are able to convince investors. Most of the startups don't talk to investors often. They must talk every month, meet them once a quarter, and try to convince them to put in more money, because the existing investors will always support their investment compared to getting new people, and getting new people will be difficult. The government has said that Chinese investors who were investing for the last 6 years, maybe $8 billion out of $60 billion, they should try to shut them out. So we have a problem. So capital may be short for startups. Which industries are globally competitive? Mobile phones are competitive. We have a mobile phone industry which makes 250 mobile phones, 30% value add with PCBs being set up, largely Chinese. So India could become a major center of export. It's already becoming a center of export. The pharma industry has to start manufacturing APIs. Now the US has opened up the FDA regulations to allow them to make new generic drugs. And with healthcare costs shooting up, most people go for generics. Pharma supplies 45% of America's medicine. Now new markets in Africa, Europe, and Japan will open up, because everybody wants good medicine at lower prices, because they've been deeply hurt, and that they're not going to try anything else. So they can become global suppliers at this point of time. And if our commodity sector like steel, we are second largest manufacturer for steel. Steel can look at exports, hopefully to the West, and I think we can really do well. Cement, we have got 535 million tons capacity, and we could do well. Now, many areas are impacted, like entertainment. Now, entertainment will be content-based. Netflix is here. They've got an enormous amount of content. So people may not go to cinema theaters. So the business of cinema theaters may come down. So we got to induce people to go by reducing prices, give them a good experience, and more content will be created on the OTT platform. Education will shift. We have seen Baiju increase subscribers by 6 million. And all the edtech companies are doing fairly well, because suddenly they're seeing a boom. But only about maybe 100 million children out of 265 million children have the capacity and the technology to go online. And maybe 25-30% of them are already online. The government has to come with a massive program of online education for school children in villages, in government schools. And in college too, exams are going to be held by proctoring. That means online examinations. AICTE has made some announcement. UC has made some announcement. And education could be online, offline. So all universities, colleges should start using technology. Habits have changed. It will take some time for the regulators to accept it, but regulators are more and more convinced online education is the way to go. Cost of education could come down, and people may not attend college in large numbers next year, particularly in courses like management, because they feel the investment may not be worth it. And if jobs decline, more people may go for master's courses this year, and hopefully the master's courses are cheaper in fees compared to the bachelor's, which is in high demand. So we're going to see newspapers going to be impacted because advertisers are now saying, where are the eyeballs? The eyeballs are digital, they'll go digital. So I think the newspapers, the world style editors, etc. Digital content players are impacted because people are going to only particular channels, mostly entertainment, and all these news channels that come up, many of them carrying all kind of news. I don't know whether they're going to get money again. And likewise, e-health. Hospitals are seeing a decline in occupancy. Of course, it'll come back. People are going to fall sick, and the people, we need help. But the fact is, a lot of the work can be done by teleconferencing. And I think the specialists who spend only 35% of the time looking at people may continue to do that. So look at each of the industry, and each industry is impacted. Each of the industry, our habits have changed, and people have to adjust. For the existing businesses which don't use technology are going to be impacted. So for starters, B2B will see a boom in business. B2C will see a boom in business. And aggregators like Ola, Uber may need time, because the experience of China is, because of social distancing, people may buy more cars, or people may walk, or people may use bicycles. So you may suddenly see more bicycles and more two-wheelers in India than cars, because cars are expensive. We could maybe see more cars being purchased after 3 or 4 months. We don't know, but that's the experience of China. But China's income levels have been very much high. So I will end by saying the world has changed. The current generation has to seize the moment. The generation that is in final year of college, the Gen Z, and who are going to college, will see a very different world. And the millennials will have to adjust deeply, because they're all working and they're prime. And then, of course, the business leader, the Gen X, who are coming to retirement, or possibly in the mid 45, 50, may see a decline in jobs, because many companies say, what are you doing? Why are we paying you so much of money? You see, very large companies have cut salary costs for higher paid people. And of course, the people who are retired, the baby boomers born after Second World War, they change their habits. They'll probably be happy, less stressed out. There could be mental health issues because socialization may come down for the next 6 to 8 months. But their habits are changed. They're upgraded themselves, and hopefully their costs will come down. So I think the generational shift, the generation which is coming down, have to seize the moment. And if we go further on 5, 6 years, look back at this time and relook at what we are talking, what we are doing, we may find that all this has come true. Thank you very much. I'll be very happy to answer questions.
Sorry, I think I'm muted. I'll just put the questions forward to you.
Yeah.
A question comes from Mr. Shom Shankar Mitro. He's saying, how much time will it take for us to rise back in the position of economic growth?
Well, I think it'll take maybe 9 months to 12 months if you get a very large reconstruction budget and massive spending on infrastructure. If you don't get that, then I think there are going to be challenges.
The next one is from Mr. R. S. Swaminathan, who is asking, how can we quickly attract business and industry leaving China to come to India?
Well, 2 things have to be done. First, we got to go to those global manufacturers who are in China, talk to them. Many of them are in India already in a very small way. So we have to go talk to them. Ease of business is important. I think that's really improved in the last 4 or 5 years. But the important thing is they may be hesitant to invest because they've also been hit by lack of revenues. Boeing has been hit. Caterpillar has been hit. All those companies have been hit. So if you go tell them that we'll set up plans for you, we'll invest. You come and let us have an agreement, a JV, where we invest and you can go and market globally. That could work. To me, that is the big thing that we have to do. So it is marketing, investment capacity and cutting costs, automating our plants and improving productivity, if we're able to do that, and we have this opportunity right now because plants are getting automated and the costs are the same any part of the world. And if you're able to manage supply chain costs and become competitive, the need for diversification will shed business our way too.
The next question comes from Mr. Shumon De. He's asking on automation, that will automation threat existing jobs in India?
Well, I think it will, because, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Can it be a reality for rural India, particularly?
Well, I think it will because, let us admit one thing. The world is going to become more competitive. There's surplus capacity in the world. There are not enough demands. The world is going to be competitive. And the world is competitive. Production capacity has to be shut down, largely in China. And we don't know what the Chinese will do, right? Yeah. And that means the price level cannot grow up. Prices may degrow. And prices degrow. To create volumes, people cut prices and try to sell more. And the only way to sell more is to cut costs. And the only way to cut costs is to automate more. Because, in India, labor costs are higher, productivity is poorer. And if you want to be a global competitor, you must automate. So I think that will be the trend going forward. It may not impact the people existing in businesses that much as new hirings. Or the companies could say, I'm going to cut a whole layer of management, people 45 to 50 or 55 whom I'm paying very high, and getting younger people to work. And younger people could cut maybe 1/5 to 2/5 of what they're paying. That's one. And in rural India, you must know now that agriculture has got automated in Punjab, right? In Punjab, the grain threshers are working 24/7. They're putting lighting on the field, and they've been able to massively increase their harvesting beyond a point because the labor is just not there. Haryana, is again there. Between Haryana and Punjab, 25% of the production of crops is happening. So all over, I think this automation is happening in agriculture in a very, very big way. But what we need is labor-intensive industries. But labor-intensive industries like garments and others also getting automated. But we need to lower costs. So we need to have labor-intensive industries in smaller towns. Why should 5 lakh garment workers work in Bangalore? Why should 6 lakh garment workers work near Delhi? I don't know about Calcutta whether you got garment workers. Why should maybe 1 lakh, 2 lakh jewelry workers work in Bombay? It's very expensive in Bombay. They can work in smaller cities 50 kilometers away where the quality of life is better. They could live in the villages and come and they could work. So I think we'll see a massive reordering of the Indian workforce. And automation will kill jobs unless the economy grows. Fortunately for us, we are an economy constrained by supply, and the government spends properly in infrastructure. Next year, we could see growth, and that will mitigate to some extent the decline in employment. And maybe next year, there'll actually be an increase in total people employed compared to the beginning of the COVID period.
The next question is about, you spoke about banking and lending. The question is, do you think the proportion of an NPA will go up further in times to come because of lack of liquidity and loss of non-essential sectors post-COVID?
Yes, I think NPA will go up. That is what people are presenting. Axis Bank is put up 3,000 crores last quarter itself. Even HDFC has put up his reserves. HBI may put up his reserves. And I think, there is going to be, that's why we need a loan guarantee scheme for the government to protect the banks, because the government otherwise will have to pump in more equity into the public sector banks. But now 60% of lending is having to the private sector banks, and they may clamp up. If banks clamp up lending, then I think the economy will hurt even more. They have to lend. For that, guarantees have to come. And their existing clients too require help. The real estate will not be able to pay an installment for the next 12 months unless they liquidate their assets. And many of the manufacturers who are marginal say they want deferment of installment for the next 1 year. The power plants, power producers are in deep trouble because the distributors are not paying the money. I think this year the loss could be 2 lakh crores because power consumption has come down dramatically. ONGC does not know what to do. They used to sell oil at $45 a barrel. Now it's $21. And, they may run into a loss. We don't know. Indian Oil and others may suffer a huge loss because of inventory. We saw Reliance have that. So the bigger companies that survive and do well, they'll not become NPAs. But downstream, because these are big consumers of downstream, we could see an increase in NPA. And of course, MSMEs, will have large casualties unless the government gives loan guarantees. So I think the banks will be a sector to watch.
You had mentioned about healthcare, pharmaceutical, and you had reflected on consumption patterns, etc. The question that is here is, do you foresee any other sector zooming up in the next 2 or 3 quarters?
Well, I would say that the e-logistics centers will zoom up at the cost of the traditional logistics. E-commerce will zoom up. Technology sectors will zoom up. And maybe in the consumer area, people like Patanjali. Patanjali's cost is 30% that of levers, right? Now, if you got a soap bar which costs 50 rupees and you got a soap bar which costs 30 rupees, what will you buy? Maybe 3 months earlier, you'll buy the 50 rupees for the brand. Today, you'll quietly go for, keep the package of the 50 and buy the 30 because you'll downtrade. Will you go to a fancy restaurant? You will not go to a fancy restaurant. Instead of going 5 times a week, you may go once in a month. So I think there'll be down trading, and in the consumer sector, other sectors, it'll be hit. The export-oriented sectors like pharma, like electronics and cell phones can see rapid growth because the costs are coming down. And the two-wheeler sector may see good growth in exports because in most parts of the world, because social distancing, people will want individual vehicles. The auto industry is mixed. We don't know what will happen because the Maruti chairman said he expects to sell more cars. Maybe Hyundai and Maruti can export more vehicles. Maybe Mahindra can export more tractors. So I think the manufacturing may see an increase, but largely it's very difficult to say at this point of time which are there from pharma and from electronics, which is largely for internal consumption, what will improve.
Coming to the consumer, you spoke about the consumer. The question here is, how will retail consumer behavior change? How will altered lifestyles impact marketing messages, and how will it impact buying behavior?
Well, first of all, I believe that people will be cautious about spending money because they don't know whether they're going to have jobs, whether the salary is going to be cut, etc. So they'll be cautious. They'll want to save because of the fear. Second is they'll be down trading, like I said earlier, down trading, because for necessities, they'll try to get the better prices. And the third thing is, I believe that discretionary expenditure, like buying a new house or buying some gold jewelry or something fancy, may be postponed. You see, there's great uncertainty. When there's great uncertainty, people will clamp down unless confidence come up. This is a behavioral economics, right? And that's why to bolster the confidence, we need a large-scale stimulus budget from the central government. All the state governments are broke. I don't know whether they'll be able to pay salary after 2 months. So I think, we need the central government to massively borrow from the Reserve Bank and start pumping money into, infrastructure with the hope that downstream impact will be very good. So there will be change in consumer behavior. People will be more cautious. Are you going to buy more clothes now? Or are you going to keep the same clothes you have? You'll keep the same clothes you have, right? You probably wash it better. And most people have a lot of clothes. So I think there is going to be pain.
The next question is from Mr. Rajesh Raisinghani. He's asking, what are your views on the hospitality and amusement industry or the entertainment industry in general? You spoke about the entertainment industry, the hospitality and amusement industry.
Well, I think let us look at the problems that we have. Social distancing will be a reality for the next 3 to 6 months. Why? People are not sure whether there'll be a comeback of the COVID, right? That means places where people aggregate, people come together will be less. So if you have an amusement park and people have to come together, there'll be less attendance. If you have a cinema theater, you have to have social distancing, there'll be less people, less crowds. If you have a mall, there'll be less people coming there because people don't want to be seen together. And even government will enforce strict orders. If they're going to have events, event managers may have big dance concerts, people are not going to come. People are very scared. People have to maintain distance. So the aggregation of human activity, which used to happen, all those areas will suffer. And business travel will come down because 1, people have changed habits. 2, the technology becomes so cheap and people find they can be more productive. Instead of traveling long distance for a meeting, they can as well do a Zoom call and talk. I was talking to some of our startups and they're saying that we are able to talk, have more calls with people who never gave us meeting time because they wanted a face-to-face meeting. Now they're doing meeting on Zoom. So I think all these behavioral changes will ensure that, that people don't travel. So hospitality in hotels, well, I think there'll be a decline in occupancy. Remember, international tourism is gone. Are people going to come back? We don't know when they're going to be international flights. National tourism with aviation, the middle seat may not need to be occupied. We don't know what the guidelines will be. And there is no date when the airlines will open. There's no date when the airports will be crowded again. So local tourism will come down. And that means people who should stay in smaller hotels will come down. So these sectors require a particular stimulus. And will people go to restaurants? Many restaurants are saying, we're going to increase the space between tables because restaurants have very close knit. So will you go to Flurries for tea? And if you go there, they'll make sure the next person is about maybe 2 meters away. If the people sitting down together who are strangers, then there'll be a problem, right? So takeaways may be more, home deliveries may be more. So all these sectors are going to be impacted.
When we are having a flurry of questions coming in, but we'll restrict it to one last question, which is, what are the career paths you spoke of the Gen Z, what are the career paths that Gen Z should look at in future?
Well, I think the career paths for them will be in new areas like design, because creativity will be a big one. In new areas like technology, because technology will be in greater demand, because suddenly the demand will shoot up. People want to get over legacy. And they'll be in the creative fields, in the arts and others, because for a period of time, maybe 1 or 2 years, they'll grow up. And they'll be in research, because I think more money will go into research, because innovation will go up. It means that Gen Z will have to specialize, because competition is going to be intense, and you need to specialize more and more. And you should have a specialization in many skills which are in scarce supply in other countries like the UK and in the US. And if you look at job posting in those countries, you'll find that some of them in technology, in research, in big data, in artificial intelligence, in creativity, in design, etc., are in short supply. So look at all these fields and specialize, and doctors will be in greater demand, because now we know there's fear. So I think, specialization is the key, and learn how to be more productive using technology. And if you have an opportunity, please try doing a master's degree, because for the world to normalize will take 2 years.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pai. It was really revealing and really eye-opening from what you told us. And we are indeed very, very grateful to have had you with us this evening. I think you have opened a lot of eyes this evening for us, and the way to move forward, the things that we need to do, the things that we need to think of, like you said, design, creativity, innovation. These are the ways forward. People will have to think smart. People will have to act smart. People will have to work smart to be able to survive, grow, and thrive in the conditions that are coming up with us. While thanking you, I must thank everybody who has come and joined us today, who've been so involved, asked so many questions, and we look forward to having Mr. Pai again with us in the not too distant future. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be there, and I'm happy to talk to you again, because I have very fond memories of Calcutta. Now with technology, it becomes easier, so you can do it much more. But thank you very much. Thank you. Great program. Thank you very much. Very grateful. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye.